Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, a married couple of 7 years, seemingly in a good relationship, faced a crisis when the wife cheated with a coworker after a work event. She initially lied about the event, but later admitted to having intimate with the coworker, citing a desire for variety and intimacy experiences. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I have been together for 7 years and married for 4. We have a great marriage and 2 children. We were each other's one and only sexual partners last week. She ended up going home with a coworker on Friday night, lying and saying it was a work function. Specifically, she texted me around 7:30 that a work function suddenly came up and she had to go. I was a bit pissed since we planned to watch a movie at home and she canceled without notice, but I saw no reason to mistrust her. She said she would be back by 9:30 and I was okay with that. Then she ended up coming back at 11:30 in hysterics. She was crying and mumbling and admitted she slept with her coworker. There was lots of anger and crying on my end, and we spent the whole night discussing it. She said that her coworker, a younger guy who had been flirting with her for weeks, very persistently. She did not tell me about this, her reasoning being that it would have never led to something anyway, and showered her with compliments, finally broke down her barriers, and they had intimate at his place 3 times in 2 hours. She said she felt like she missed out on something by only being with one intimacy partner. So I didn't cheat and wasn't thinking rationally. She said she got caught up in the moment for weeks, it seems, and she never planned to cheat on me. She said being treated like a sexy, desirable woman by a young, handsome guy only clouded her thinking further. I'm not so sure what she meant by this, since we have plenty at least 3 times a week, as well as frequent date nights. I asked her to show me her phone, email, and media right there, and there was no sign of him at all. They never spoke outside of work. I thought she might be lying and covering her tracks, but I verified this in the following days and contacted my service provider and used a text recovery program, and they never had any contact outside of work. My wife is saying it was a one-time mistake and will never happen again. She decided to quit work, handed in her notice already, and also outed the coworker due to the no fraternization policy and is searching for another job. She also promised to give me complete open access to all her media whenever I want, and is pretty much begging me not to leave her. She has apologized and shed more tears than can be counted in numbers. I wanted to stay away from her for a while, but my kids need me, so I told her to give me my space in the house while I think things through. My wife wants to do couples counseling and therapy and wants to pay for it herself so as not to burden me. She's taking full blame for the cheating and assures me I did not contribute to it at all. I never thought I would be the type to consider forgiving cheating. I always thought I would steel myself and go no contact without a second's hesitation. I'm trying to determine the pros and cons of this. Today's second story. In this story, Opie, married for 5 years, discovers his wife's affair during the lockdown. He meticulously gathers evidence and surprises her with divorce papers and a scandalous cake at her workplace. The wife faces public humiliation and reveals manipulation by coworkers. The wife expresses regret. Despite counseling attempts, he rejects reconciliation, anticipating strategic legal moves. I, 32 male, have been married to my wife, 30 female, for 5 years, and it feels like in the last year she's become a complete stranger. We were both established when we met, and at first it felt like we shared the same values. I went to a trade school and learned a very technical job. I worked entry-level jobs before I proved myself and built a reputation in code to the point where my references trumped my education. My wife has a graduate degree and works in a management position. This created a bit of what I thought was friendly tension at the time. Early on, I complained about middle management. I saw them as roadblocks between me and finishing tasks. My wife saw middle management as necessary for directing personnel and resources. Personally, I was stuck with a bad string of middle managers that thought code developers were modular and replaceable. They set unreasonable deadlines, promised features to clients, and created scope creep. Every time I told her about the next boneheaded thing my manager instituted, she always took his side note. She never met him. "He sees things you don't," she would say. After about a year of dating, I learned to stop telling her about my day at work if it didn't involve days off or raises. I always felt like she resented the fact I didn't go back to school for a 4-year graduate degree. She pushed about it early on before marriage, but when I broke down the loans and debt, she dropped it. She was relatively debt-free when we married, as was I. As I said, we were pretty close in earning power as well. About 2. I started working for a company that had an owner that talked to me directly. He saw value in me and my potential. I now make 50% more than my wife, and my manager is a guy that works well with me. While not a technical lead, he embodies what a Scrum Master should be. I would say he knows how to stay out of my way, but that makes it sound adversarial. He's a great supervisor. The first 4 years of marriage went great overall. I didn't complain about managers from work, and she didn't push me to dump thousands into a piece of paper and debt. We had fun, went on date nights several times a month, shared hobbies, cooked together, read books together, and watched movies together. When the first lockdown hit, we both worked from home then. Our house is really nice, with 3 spare bedrooms for if we eventually had kids. One was already converted into an office for me, and when the lockdown started, we converted the second one into an office for her. We both telecommuted, but we both had very different philosophies about it. I would get up, make breakfast, shower, shave, dressed in a suit, then walk into my home office. I hate suits and ties, by the way, but it does put me in the mental state of oak. This is work time. My wife, however, rolls out of bed, eats breakfast, brushes her teeth, puts on a t-shirt and sweatpants, and goes into her office with the iPad to play Candy Crush between emails. It's the weirdest thing, how proximity can create distance. She has several meetings a day, and I can tell because she keeps her door wide open and I can hear them. I have 1 meeting a day, a scrum, and it's short. I closed my door for mine 5 months ago. She said she felt insulted that I closed my door for the daily scrum. I explained that it was for peace and to keep my mind focused on work. She said she felt like I was hiding something. I tried to keep up her hobbies together, but she brushed it off as we see each other all day as is. But I didn't. I treated the lockdown as temporary, and maybe I shouldn't have. It got really bad when her company instituted a partial office reopening. She jumped at the chance to be part of the 50% of the company back in a rearranged office to allow social distancing. I didn't blame her. I missed working at the office too. But my company hadn't opened up the offices yet, and as long as I had access to my dev environment, it really wasn't needed. I think several of her other coworkers got into her head. She would stay after work to hang out with them and have drinks at a coworker's place. I pressed and wanted to know more, but she was secretive and guarded. She became colder and colder too. It felt like I had a roommate and not a wife at that point. Last month on a weekend, she put her old iPad on the desk and said, "Can you wipe this? I want to gift this to my niece." I shrugged. I often do that sort of thing for the family and didn't think much about it. Off she went to another company gathering, and I switched on the iPad. Maybe my wife was becoming so brazen. Maybe she thought I wouldn't check it and just do a factory reset. Point is, I checked it and saw her messaging app, pics, videos, and I am with her boss. They've been having an affair for 2 months. I can't describe the feeling in my veins. It was like my blood turned to ice. It reminded me of the scene in Equilibrium where the polygraph flatlined. I copied everything, packaged it into cloud storage I use for dev projects separate from work, and started looking for a lawyer. I didn't confront her at first because I wasn't sure what I would do. The new sensation in my body felt like I was both numb and walking through water. She didn't notice or didn't care. By that point, we were already dead. Bedroom. We were really in the roommate stage, I guess. I contacted a lawyer and he wanted to keep investigating in me, to keep my mouth shut. He suggested I get a private investigator and suggested a good one. For the last 4 weeks, we have been gathering evidence and he was preparing the filing for divorce. Be patient, he kept telling me, and my ice-filled veins and her indifference made it easy at first. Yesterday, my lawyer told me he had the filing almost ready. Our state is at fault, and the PI got photos, video, plus the texts. It was pretty much a slam dunk. Then last night, I don't know what happened to me, but the ice turned to fire. She came home late, of course, and I don't even remember what she said to me, but I went off. I said I hoped it was worth having sex with her boss. She turned mean, nasty, and vindictive. She said I wasn't there for her emotionally. I was just lounging all day at home. Even if I was earning the lion's share at home, I wasn't intellectually stimulating, even though I work a highly technical job. I told her I had a lawyer and she laughed. She said my bluff was pathetic. There was no way I was leaving her, that even if I divorced her, she would get half my paycheck. If I stayed with her, at least I would get to occasionally have sex, so I shouldn't mess this up. She was a different person. I said to her, that's not a marriage. She laughed again. Honey, this is the 21st century. A woman can have her cake and eat it too. She laughed again and she went to bed. I emailed my boss and said I needed a week off to handle a family issue. He, of course, granted it. I slept on the couch in my office this morning. She left as I was getting dressed and only said, don't wait up. I went to my lawyer's office and he said he had the papers ready. He had a process server with him and asked how I wanted the papers served. I told him my lawyer, bless him, laughed and said, you better not. I've had so many people want to do acute revenge serving, and I always talk them out of it. Judges don't have a sense of humor. He told me how this could cost me alimony or assets. I didn't care. Her words burned me. I wanted her burned back. The lawyer did his best to keep telling me not to, but he relented when he saw how serious I was about this. The process server heard my idea. He laughed as well and said, you're my hero. I had to special order something with a rush. Cost sent the process server to pick it up and deliver that with the papers to my wife's work. The process server told me what happened when he was done. He said he had to. He said he showed up at her office with the large box and papers. He found my wife talking and laughing with a group of coworkers and friends and asked her name. She confirmed and asked what it was about. He put the box on a nearby desk and opened it. It was a cake, one that you could get a custom image printed on and frosting. I didn't even know that was a thing until this morning. The image was an image of my wife and her boss in an embrace, clothed. But it was obvious what they were doing with the words, here's your cake, eat it, piped in icing above the image. The process server put the papers next to the cake box on the table. You've been served, he said. What happened next was a loud screech from her. At least 8 people in the office saw the cake. My wife freaked and swatted the large cake box off the table where it fell on the carpet. But with the image still visible, several of her coworkers started berating her and she started crying and screaming. The process server took a hasty retreat. My phone blew up and I just kept sending her to voicemail. I didn't bother reading her texts. She hasn't come home. But her mother texted me saying she is going to stay over there for now. The euphoric rush of the cake felt great, but as the hours pass, I am considering my lawyer's words now. Did I screw this up? Update. I am overwhelmed with all the support I've gotten in the past week. I'm still off from work. My boss decided to give me 2 weeks instead of the one I requested. I've already split our savings in half, put my half in an account in my name, and changed auto, pay for the mortgage, credit, freezes, etc. Everything my lawyer advised me to do. With the household funds. First off, we have no kids. Second, I'm seeing a therapist to help me. I found one that is well versed in helping with infidelity, seeing him twice, and I am feeling a lot more balanced out. Still some weird low points, but nowhere. near the same amount of swing between the two. After the cake stunt, I'm definitely taking my lawyer's advice on anything from this point forward. He said, "You can be happy or you can be right in regards to taking his advice, and I get that now." He told me that if my wife wanted to return home that I was not legally allowed to kick her out, but I should record all interactions with her. She's not staying at home again, still at her mom's, but she did want to come by Saturday to talk. My lawyer told me I could, but said he would prefer if she wanted to talk to have it done at his office with her own lawyer present, as well as himself. I presented this to her in an email, of course, and she responded that she didn't have a lawyer. My lawyer said bearing showing up at his office to have witnesses and record the meeting. I let my wife know this was my condition for talking with her. She actually accepted. So I had 2 mutual friends come in, all 3 of us with our phones on the table, ready to record. She came in and tried to give me an awkward hug, but I just held my hand up and the phone started to record. As the 4 of us sat down at the kitchen table, she was actually apologetic. She said she felt like she was watching a movie versus being in charge of her life. But it felt thrilling and with a rush. She asked if I wanted to know why. I said I really didn't care. At this point, she felt that she owed that much to me and told me. She said that when she started going back to the office when it reopened, she got really close to 3 female coworkers, each a few years older than her, and 2 of them divorced. She said they warmed their way into her head and told her about how she was owed more than she was getting. They asked her constantly about her home life. The ringleader apparently was psychoanalyzing me from my wife's stories. My wife told them about my issue with managers back in my early career, and the ringleader took this to mean I'm threatened by educated people. The ringleader told her that I was a submissive male and that she needed a take-charge man in her life, that if I found out, I might have shouted and threatened, but would get in line. My wife still has her job for now, but only just. The people that saw the cake were my wife, the 3 witches, her affair partner, boss, and, according to her, 2 other coworkers that were lateral to her. The boss immediately ended the affair and told her to only communicate with him by email, and that if she ever tried to show up in his office alone, he would call on a coworker immediately. The 3 witches turned on her immediately and publicly berated her for doing such an awful thing. The other coworkers, according to her, didn't want to get involved with her soap opera. So no reports to HR. She said her 3 friends doing a 180 on her immediately sort of shook her out of her fog. She seemed really ashamed and said she had to ask for $5,000. I was confused because there was money left in her account. I made it a point that she had it. She was living with her mom. She didn't have any major expenses. It turns out the ringleader and the other 2 witches wanted to be paid for their silence. They were blackmailing her and gave her a deadline, lest HR will know all the sordid details. She was pleading for help. I told her that there was no going back to normal after this. Everything would change, that if she bet now, it would be more money later. Best for her to report herself, her boss, and her coworkers. It would work better than having sleepless nights waiting for the knife to fall. She seemed to hem and haw on that. But she did finally ask the big question, what about us? Where does that leave us? I told her there was no us, that was done, and she best get herself that lawyer to go over the divorce. The best I could do was tell her how to handle her work situation, but she most likely needed to find another career after this. I also said she needed to go to therapy herself because someone who could go from laughing in my face to pleading for help a week later needed help sorting themselves out. She pointed out the cake, and then all I said to that was yeah, and I am seeing someone for that. She left soon after that. No word on if she will follow my advice or try to pay her coworkers blackmail. Why is it always the coworkers? Final update. First week back at work, and my boss decided to tell everyone we could get off at noon today for Good Friday Easter weekend. I'm doing a lot better. I'm still seeing an individual therapist. And last weekend, I drove out into the rural roads to unwind and saw a dog breeder as I was driving by and was curious, stopped in. He was an Asian fellow and had a breed of Asian dogs I'd never seen before. He was telling me about how they were extremely loyal and brave. After playing with a few of them, I am considering going back to buy one, even if they are extremely pricey. I believe they're called Jindos. The wife always entertains getting a dog, but she never found a breed she liked anyways. The wife still has not moved back in or made any direct attempts to contact, but she did get a lawyer. My lawyer called me and said something like, "Buckle up, you're going to visit a marriage counselor." I said I didn't want to see one. The divorce was happening no matter what. He agreed, but then said normally I'd tell the other attorney to pound sand, but now I have to paint you as a reasonable person, so you have to entertain reasonable requests. This is why you should listen to your attorney. If I held back my anger, I would have been able to ignore this request. He did give me advice for this session. Don't admit fault. Don't concede I failed anywhere. Don't agree to anything, not even a second session. Just attend this session. And if I wanted to still divorce, answer questions as neutrally as possible. Don't yell, don't shout, don't accuse. The visit, if it could be called that, was via Zoom me in my home, my wife in her mother's home, and the counselor in what appeared to be an office. It was interesting. The counselor was interested in spreading blame. Surely you could see how distance could create need. I simply said I don't agree. It takes two people to create a rift in a marriage. Yeah, she and her boss holding on to this is staying in the past. There could be a wonderful future. Past behavior is a good indicator of future behavior. I wouldn't pretend for a second that I played mind games or ran circles around her, because I didn't. I just didn't engage more than I had to. It was 2 hours of her and my wife just trying to make me take even 10% of the blame so she could say, "See, it was both of your faults. Now let's rebuild." Or something like that. Near the end of the session, the counselor asked me why I was acting so cold. I said something along the lines of, "Did you know infidelity can create the same mental damage as PTSD?" The counselor said, "I heard something like that before. Yes." The session's time was running out, and I was about to sign out when my wife asked if I was good with attending another session next weekend. I said I didn't think that was a good idea. She then begged what it would take for me to agree to session next week. I said goodnight and signed off. Now I'm just waiting to see what the next reasonable request is that I can't turn down just so my lawyer can paint the picture that I'm a well-adjusted guy that had one outburst of bad behavior,